The alien queen's daughter broke all laws, just to be with me. Resonance across stars. Lieutenant Davian Reed dragged himself through the acidic mud of Nexus 7, each movement sending jolts of agony through his shattered leg. The battle had been a massacre, his entire squadron vaporized when the Ceridian warships unleashed their quantum disruptors from orbit. 17 elite soldiers gone in an instant, leaving only him, the least experienced of them all. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. Rain fell from the planet's sickly green atmosphere, each droplet sizzling as it made contact with his damaged combat armor. His helmet's display flickered erratically, occasionally showing the broken landscape ahead, a wasteland of twisted metal and half-collapsed structures that had once been a thriving human research outpost. 15 years of brutal conflict between the Terran Coalition and the Ceridian Imperium had turned countless worlds like this one into battlefields. Resources, territory, ideology, the reasons for fighting had blurred with each passing year, leaving only hatred and momentum to fuel the war. Davian checked his pulse rifle. The power core had fractured, rendering it useless. All he had left was his sidearm and the combat knife strapped to his thigh. He activated his suit's thermal dampeners, hoping to mask his heat signature from Ceridian scanners. The system operated at perhaps 20% capacity, better than nothing. Movement caught his eye. Silent, graceful shadows weaving through the debris field ahead. Ceridian scouts. They moved like liquid darkness, their armor seeming to absorb what little light remained in the dying day. Unlike humans, who relied primarily on vision, Ceridians had evolved heightened auditory senses. They could detect a whisper from 50 meters away. Davian froze, pressing himself deeper into the mud. He held his breath as one scout paused nearby, its elongated helmet retracting to reveal features that were disturbingly close to human, yet undeniably alien. Opalescent skin with a subtle luminescence. Eyes too large, with horizontal pupils that widened in the gathering darkness. The characteristic ridge patterns along the jaw that marked all Ceridians. The scout tilted its head, listening, then continued onward. Davian exhaled slowly. A soft rustling sound behind him. He whirled, heart hammering, hand reaching for his sidearm. What stood before him wasn't a Ceridian soldier. She was Ceridian without question, the same otherworldly elegance, the same luminous skin and large eyes with their distinctive horizontal pupils. But she wore no armor. Instead, she was dressed in what appeared to be civilian clothing, a flowing garment of material that shifted colors like oil on water. Her hair fell in long platinum strands adorned with what appeared to be living gemstones that pulsed with soft light. Most striking of all was her expression. Not hatred, not the cold calculation he'd seen in Ceridian soldiers. Curiosity. "You're bleeding," she said, her voice carrying that strange harmonic quality all Ceridians possessed, like two voices speaking in perfect unison. Davian raised his sidearm, knowing it was probably useless but unwilling to die without a fight. "Ceridian," he stated flatly. She tilted her head, studying the weapon. "That's broken," she said simply. He glanced down. The power cell was cracked, leaking blue fluid. The weapon was as useless as his rifle. "Why aren't you calling for your people?" he asked, eyes darting toward where the scouts had disappeared. She looked past him toward the horizon, something shifting in her expression. "I don't belong to them." A distant rumble echoed across the landscape, approaching drop ships most likely. Davian tensed, preparing to run though he knew it was futile. When he looked back, she had moved closer, soundless as a ghost. "You'll die out here," she said. Not a threat, a statement of fact. "Come with me." "Why?" he asked, suspicion sharp in his voice. "So you can interrogate me in some Ceridian prison?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across her features. "We don't all work like that." She extended her hand, palm up, not touching him, simply offering. "Choose." Davian hesitated, years of combat training and propaganda warring with his survival instinct. "How do I know this isn't a trap?" "You don't," she replied simply. But your alternatives seem limited. Against every instinct hammered into him during years of combat training, against the memory of watching his squadron disintegrate in Ceridian attacks, against the very foundation of the war that had defined his adult life, Davian followed her. The shelter was concealed beneath a collapsed communications array, sealed with a form of biotechnology that responded to her touch. Inside, it was unexpectedly warm and dry, illuminated by bioluminescent orbs that hovered near the ceiling. Davian staggered as adrenaline began to fade, his injuries making themselves known with renewed vengeance. She offered him a flask containing a liquid that tasted simultaneously sweet and metallic. He drank before caution could stop him and immediately felt warmth spreading through his limbs, the edge of his pain dulling. "What is this place?" he asked, looking around at what appeared to be a sanctuary carved from the hostile environment outside. "Safe," she said simply. Then, after a moment, "I am Nilara." "You're a Ceridian," he said, as if that explained everything. "I was," she replied. "Now I belong to no one." Davian sank against the wall, the strange drink making his head swim pleasantly. "You could have killed me." "I still might," she responded, but there was no malice in it. Despite himself, Davian sparked a laugh, then winced as his ribs protested. "I believe you." A silence settled between them, not entirely uncomfortable. Then she spoke again. "I know you think we're monsters." He looked at her sharply. "You invaded our colonies. Destroyed entire cities. What should we think?" "You only see half the war," she said, her large eyes reflecting the bioluminescent light. "The other half is buried in a history your leaders won't acknowledge." Davian wanted to argue, to defend the cause he'd bled for. But exhaustion was claiming him, the strange drink pulling him toward unconsciousness. As darkness took him, he had one last coherent thought: why would a Ceridian risk everything to save an enemy soldier? He awoke to the sound of singing, at least, he thought it was singing. The melody was unlike anything he'd ever heard, oscillating between frequencies that shouldn't have been audible to human ears, yet somehow resonated in his chest like a physical presence. He opened his eyes to find Nilara kneeling beside a pool of luminescent liquid at the far end of the shelter. Her hands hovered over its surface, causing ripples that glowed with increasing intensity as her song continued. When she finished, the light in the pool stabilized, casting soft azure reflections across the walls. She turned, seemingly unsurprised to find him awake. "Your wounds are healing," she observed. Davian glanced down at his leg. The compound fracture had been sealed with some kind of crystalline substance, and beneath it, his flesh tingled with a not unpleasant warmth. The pain had dulled to a manageable ache. "What did you do to me?" he asked, more curious than accusatory. "Nothing your body wasn't designed to do already," she replied. "I merely accelerated the process." Davian sat up cautiously, testing his limits. He felt stronger than he had any right to be after the injuries he'd sustained. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling foreign on his tongue when addressed to a Ceridian. Nilara inclined her head slightly. "You're the first human to thank me for anything." "You're the first Ceridian who hasn't tried to kill me on sight," he countered. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Fair exchange." Davian took in his surroundings properly for the first time. The shelter was larger than he'd initially thought, extending back into what appeared to be an abandoned research station. What he had assumed were simple light sources were actually complex networks of living technology, Ceridian biotech far more advanced than anything he'd seen in combat. This wasn't just some random hideout. This was a fully equipped outpost. "You've been here a while," he observed. Nilara moved to what appeared to be a workstation, her fingers dancing over surfaces that lit up at her touch. "3 of your Earth years," she confirmed. "Alone?" "By choice." Vance stood, relieved to find his legs steady beneath him. "What's a Ceridian doing hiding in an abandoned human outpost on a contested planet?" Nilara's hands stilled. She turned to him, eyes narrowing slightly. "I could ask why you can understand me without a translator." Davian frowned. He hadn't even realized, her words had simply made sense to him, despite the fact that Ceridian language was notoriously complex and impossible for most humans to comprehend without technological assistance. "I don't know," he admitted. "Interesting," she said, studying him with new intensity. "You shouldn't be able to. Unless." "Unless what?" Instead of answering directly, she gestured for him to follow her deeper into the station. They passed through a narrow corridor that opened into a second chamber, this one dominated by what appeared to be a garden, though unlike any garden Davian had ever seen. Plants of crystalline structure grew from beds of pulsating soil. Some resembled flowers with translucent petals that shifted hue with each gentle movement of air. Others were more geometric, their forms defying terrestrial botany. "The crystal garden," Nalara said. "I've cultivated it from specimens rescued before they were destroyed in the war." Davian approached one of the crystal flowers, transfixed by its beauty. "We were told Ceridians couldn't create, only destroy," he murmured. "And we were told humans were violent primitives who understood nothing beyond conquest," she replied. "Propaganda serves those in power on both sides." She gestured to a curved bench near a particularly stunning arrangement of what resembled glass orchids. As they sat, the plants seemed to lean toward them, responding to their presence. "I left because I discovered the truth," Nalara said after a moment. "This war isn't what either of our people believe it to be." "What is it then?" Her gaze was steady, unblinking. "A manipulation. A game played by forces that have been orchestrating conflict between our species for generations." Davian frowned. "What forces?" "The architects," she said, the harmonics in her voice deepening with what might have been fear. "Beings neither human nor Ceridian who benefit from our mutual destruction." "That sounds like conspiracy thinking," Davian said carefully. "Does it?" Nalara challenged. "Think, Lieutenant Reed. Why has this war continued for so long with neither side gaining a decisive advantage? Why do peace talks mysteriously collapse just as they begin to make progress? Why do both humans and Ceridians keep finding reasons to hate each other, even as individuals like us can sit together without bloodshed?" Davian had asked himself similar questions during long nights between battles. The war had a pattern to it, an almost rhythmic quality that sometimes felt engineered rather than organic. "My father is Supreme Commander Thalaxis," she said suddenly. Davian tensed. Thalaxis was a name known to every coalition soldier, the architect of the Proxima massacre where thousands of human civilians had died. "He believes he serves our people," she continued. "But I discovered evidence that he, like your own leaders, is being influenced. Subtle manipulation spanning decades." "If you're right," Davian said slowly, "why would these architects want our species to destroy each other? Resources? Power? Perhaps simple amusement," Nalara said, her fingers tracing patterns in the crystalline soil. "Or perhaps because together, humans and Ceridians would be a force they couldn't control." The crystal plants around them dimmed slightly, as if reacting to the gravity of her words. "You understood me without translation," Nalara said, changing direction. "That shouldn't be possible unless." She stood, moving to a small alcove carved into the wall. From it, she retrieved an object that resembled an ancient scroll made of some flexible metallic material. "Among my people, I am what you might call a resonance weaver. We can perceive the threads of genetic memory that run through bloodlines. When I found you, I sensed something familiar. Echoes of contact between your ancestors and mine. Peaceful contact from before the wars began." She unrolled the scroll, revealing intricate patterns that shifted and moved like liquid. "This is a record kept by my grandmother, who was also a resonance weaver. It shows an encounter between humans and Ceridians nearly 3 centuries ago, a delegation sent to establish diplomatic relations." Davian leaned closer, fascinated despite his skepticism. The patterns coalesced into images, humans and Ceridians standing together, hands clasped in what appeared to be a ceremony of some kind. "These humans," Nalara continued, pointing to a figure near the center, carried a genetic marker that allowed for deeper telepathic connection with Ceridians, a natural bridge between our species. The marker has been systematically eliminated from the human genome over generations through targeted warfare, strategic assassinations, and genetic manipulation. That's insane, Davian said. How could anyone orchestrate something like that without being detected? Time, Nilara said simply. The architects think in centuries, not years, and they have agents among both our peoples, individuals who may not even know they're being influenced. She rolled the scroll closed, her expression grave. The reason you understand me, Lieutenant Reed, is because you carry traces of this marker. Somehow it survived in your bloodline when it was erased from so many others. Davian sat back, mind reeling. So what, I'm some kind of genetic anomaly. A throwback to a time before the war. You're a possibility, Nilara corrected. A remnant of what should have been. And the fact that you exist at all means the architect's plan isn't perfect. A sudden tremor shook the station, causing dust and small fragments to rain down from the ceiling. The crystal plants shuddered, their light flickering anxiously. What was that? Davian asked, instantly alert. Nilara moved swiftly to her workstation, hands flying over the controls. Her expression darkened. Orbital bombardment. The battle for this planet is escalating. Another tremor, stronger this time. One of the crystal plants toppled from its bed, shattering on the floor. We need to move, Nilara said, already gathering items into a small pack. They're targeting this region specifically. How could they know we're here? Davian asked, automatically falling into tactical assessment. Nilara's eyes met his, fear visible for the first time. Because they've been looking for both of us for a very long time. And now that we're together, the threat we represent has become too significant to ignore. Both sides? No, she said grimly. Something else entirely. The station shook violently, and part of the ceiling collapsed, revealing the storm-dark sky of Nexus 7. Through the gap, Davian caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. A ship unlike any human or Ceridian vessel he'd ever seen, obsidian black and somehow wrong in its proportions, descending through the clouds. The architects, Nilara whispered. They found us. Defiance of destiny. The obsidian ship hovered ominously above the shattered ceiling, emitting a low-frequency hum that made Davian's teeth ache. Nilara grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a concealed exit at the back of the station. We can't outrun them, Davian said, his military training automatically calculating their slim odds of survival. We don't need to outrun them, Nilara replied, her voice tight with urgency. We just need to reach the caverns. They fled through a maintenance tunnel as the distinctive whine of energy weapons filled the air behind them. The tunnel opened into the harsh landscape of Nexus 7, a wasteland of jagged rock formations and toxic marshlands beneath the sickly green sky. Rain fell in caustic sheets, hissing against Davian's combat armor. Nilara moved with preternatural grace across the treacherous terrain, while Davian followed, marveling at how quickly his injured leg had healed. Whatever she had done to him had accelerated his body's natural healing processes beyond anything coalition medical technology could achieve. Who are they? He shouted over the howling wind. What do they want with us? They call themselves the Nexus Collective, Nilara answered without slowing her pace. They've been manipulating both our species for centuries, ensuring our civilizations remain locked in perpetual conflict. But why us specifically? What makes us so important? Nilara paused momentarily, her luminous eyes meeting his. Because we're proof their system isn't perfect. The genetic markers they've worked to eradicate survived in both of us, allowing for a connection between human and Ceridian that shouldn't be possible according to the false histories they've created. A piercing beam of energy struck the ground mere meters away, sending molten rock spraying into the air. They dove behind a ridge of metallic stones as a second ship joined the first, its weapons systems targeting their position with uncanny precision. They can track us somehow, Davian realized, scanning their surroundings for possible escape routes. Not us, Nalara corrected, pulling something from her pack. This. She held up what appeared to be a small crystal, similar to those in her garden but pulsing with an internal light that shifted between blue and gold. What is it? A resonance key, an artifact from before the war. It's how I found you. Your genetic signature resonated with it in a way that should be impossible, unless you carried the same marker as I do. Davian reached for the crystal, but before his fingers could touch it, a vision flashed through his mind: humans and Ceridians working together, building great cities among the stars, their technologies and biologies merging in harmonious evolution. He jerked back, stunned by the clarity of the images. What was that? Genetic memory, Nalara said. The true history, preserved despite all attempts to erase it. The Nexus Collective fears this knowledge above all else, the knowledge that our species are natural allies, not enemies. A shadow passed overhead, the obsidian ship circling back for another attack run. Nalara tucked the crystal away and gestured toward a narrow fissure in the cliff face ahead. The caverns. We'll be safer underground. The cavern system extended deep beneath Nexus 7's surface, a network of tunnels illuminated by bioluminescent fungi. As they ventured deeper, the sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the occasional drip of condensation from stalactites. How did you discover all this? Davian asked as they paused in a chamber where crystalline formations jutted from the walls like frozen waterfalls. The conspiracy, the genetic markers, all of it. Nalara's expression darkened. My father, Supreme Commander Thalaxis, wasn't always the monster humans know him as. When I was young, he questioned the endless war, the convenient timing of atrocities committed by humans just as peace seemed possible. Then came his re-education. He returned changed, hardened. The father I knew disappeared, replaced by a perfect servant of the Imperium. You think these architects altered him somehow? I know they did. I found records, neural recalibration procedures disguised as medical treatments. When I investigated further, I discovered I wasn't the only child of leadership who'd lost a parent to sudden ideological clarity. The same pattern existed among human command families. Davian thought of his own father, a diplomat who had once advocated for peace talks before a near-fatal accident left him a vocal proponent of total war against the Ceridians. The parallels were too striking to ignore. If what you're saying is true, he said carefully, then everything I've fought for was built on manufactured hatred, Nalara finished. As was my entire existence within the Imperium. They continued deeper into the caverns, the tunnels gradually transforming from natural formations to what appeared to be ancient constructed passages, too geometric to be natural, yet clearly predating both human and Ceridian presence on Nexus 7. What is this place? Davian asked, running his hand along walls inscribed with unfamiliar symbols that seemed to shimmer under his touch. A sanctuary built by the last alliance between our peoples, Nalara said, her voice reverent. Before the Nexus Collective's final solution severed the connection almost completely. The passage opened into a vast chamber dominated by a structure reminiscent of an amphitheater. At its center stood a dais supporting what appeared to be a massive version of Nalara's resonance crystal, though this one lay dormant, its light extinguished. The harmonic nexus, she explained. Once, it connected all human Ceridian settlements across 12 star systems, allowing instantaneous communication through genetic resonance rather than technology. The collective destroyed all others during the First Severance War. This is the last. And it can prove everything you've told me? Show others the truth. If we can reactivate it. Nalara approached the massive crystal, placing her smaller one at its base. But it requires both bloodlines to. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber as a section of the ceiling collapsed. Through the rubble descended three figures unlike anything Davian had ever seen, neither human nor Ceridian, but something else entirely. Their forms seemed to shift and flicker as if not fully anchored to physical reality, black armor flowing like liquid around bodies that defied consistent shape. Architects, Nalara whispered, fear evident in her voice. The lead figure approached, its movements unnaturally fluid. When it spoke, the sound seemed to bypass Davian's ears entirely, materializing directly in his mind. The aberrations have been located. Genetic purge authorized. Davian drew his combat knife, a pitiful weapon against such beings, but his only option. Stay back. The figure's attention shifted to him, its featureless face rippling like disturbed water. Human soldier designation, Lieutenant Davian Reed. Genetic anomaly. Scheduled for termination during the Proxima offensive. Error in execution noted. Correction in progress. Nilara stepped between them, her hands raised in a complex gesture. The crystalline growths throughout the chamber pulsed in response, their light intensifying. "You failed," she said, her dual-toned voice stronger than Davian had ever heard it. "Your manipulations aren't perfect. The connection remains." The architect gestured to its companions, who began moving to flank them. Temporary aberrations. The severance protocol will be optimized. The species will remain separate as designed. As designed? Davian repeated, a cold realization dawning. You engineered us. Both species. Partial accuracy, the being acknowledged. Optimization of existing templates. Ceridians, emotional capacity reduced, territorial imperative enhanced. Humans, empathic receptivity diminished, fear response amplified. Separate evolutionary tracks maintained. But why? Davian demanded, anger overriding fear. What do you gain from keeping us at war? Evolutionary stability, came the emotionless reply. Combined potential exceeds acceptable parameters for subsidiary species. Unified development trajectory threatens collective primacy. They were afraid, Davian realized. These beings, whatever they truly were, feared what humans and Ceridians might become together. The architects began closing in, raising devices that pulsed with sickly energy. Davian positioned himself back-to-back with Nilara, preparing for what would likely be a short, futile last stand. The crystal, Nilara whispered urgently. We need to activate it, now. How? Blood offering. Both bloodlines. The original protocol. Understanding immediately, Davian drew his knife across his palm, then turned to do the same for Nilara. Their blood mingled as they clasped hands, then pressed their joined palms against the dormant harmonic nexus. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, a single pulse of light emanated from the crystal, followed by another, stronger one. The architects halted their advance, their liquid forms rippling with what might have been alarm. Genetic resonance detected, the lead figure intoned. Severance protocol compromised. The harmonic nexus blazed to life, bathing the chamber in brilliant light that grew in intensity until Davian had to shield his eyes. Through his splayed fingers, he saw the architects' forms destabilizing, their liquid armor boiling away as the resonance frequencies tore through them. Connection protocols reinstated, Nilara said, her voice somehow amplified and merged with the crystal's energy. Collective interference rejected. The architects convulsed, their shapes collapsing into formless masses that evaporated like mist under a harsh sun. As quickly as it had erupted, the light from the nexus stabilized, settling into a steady, pulsing glow that illuminated the chamber in gentle waves. In the sudden silence, Davian became aware that he could sense Nilara's thoughts, not with perfect clarity, but as impressions and emotions that weren't his own. From her widened eyes, he knew she was experiencing the same connection. It worked, she breathed, wonder replacing fear. The genetic bridge is re-established. Davian approached the harmonic nexus, which now displayed swirling images within its crystalline structure, scenes of ancient cooperation between humans and Ceridians, technological marvels created through their combined innovation, peaceful settlements spanning dozens of worlds. The true history, he murmured. And proof of the collective's manipulation, Nilara added. The resonance frequency is broadcasting to all compatible receivers. Anyone with even traces of the genetic marker will be experiencing these visions right now. How many would that be? More than the architects realized, I think, she said with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. They were thorough in their genetic cleansing, but not perfect. The marker found ways to survive, to recombine in subtle variations. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands across both civilizations, are seeing the truth at this moment. A distant rumbling echoed through the caverns, not the targeted weapons fire from before, but the more general bombardment of ongoing battle. The war continued above them, oblivious to the revelation unfolding beneath the surface. It's not enough, Davian said, the soldier in him asserting itself. Visions alone won't stop the fighting. We need to get this evidence to Coalition Command, to your father. We will, Nilara said, her determination clear through their newly formed bond. But first, we need to secure the Nexus. The collective will send more agents once they realize what's happened. This is just the beginning. She approached one of the walls where the ancient symbols glowed in response to her proximity. With practiced movements, she began activating what appeared to be dormant systems throughout the chamber. What are you doing? Awakening the sanctuary's defenses, she explained. And sending out a call to others like us, those who carry the marker, who've questioned the war. There are more of us than you might think, on both sides. Davian felt it then, distant minds touching his consciousness through the Nexus, hesitant at first, then with growing recognition. Humans and Ceridians alike, scattered across multiple worlds, their genetic heritage allowing them to connect to the ancient network. A resistance, he said, understanding dawning. You're building a resistance against the collective. We are, Nilara corrected, reaching for his hand. The contact sent a surge of shared purpose through their connection. Together. The way it was meant to be. Above them, the war between their peoples raged on, a conflict engineered by beings who feared what might happen if humans and Ceridians ever discovered their true potential as allies. But beneath the surface, in an ancient chamber built by their ancestors, the first threads of a new alliance were forming. Davian looked at the Ceridian woman beside him, daughter of his people's greatest enemy, now his most important ally, and made his choice. Whatever came next, whatever price they would pay for defying the architects of their species' hatred, they would face it together. The resonance between them strengthened, a bond neither wholly telepathic nor entirely emotional, but something uniquely their own, the first of its kind in centuries, but not, they both silently vowed, the last.